Hello everybody, it's Nick Dickem, and a small editor's note before the episode actually starts. This episode was supposed to include motion graphics and clips from the movie for comedic effect and also for visual reference. However, due to some sort of weird issue with my software, I cannot edit clips of the movie for the fucking life of me. I have the entire movie downloaded on my computer, and it runs fine in the viewer window, but for some reason, anytime I try to actually edit it in my software, the software stutters and then immediately crashes. I've tried HitFilm Express, I've tried DaVinci Resolve, neither of them work, and I can't figure out why. So this episode is going to be audio only, even though I initially recorded the script with motion graphics in mind. So I really apologize for that, but I hope you guys enjoy anyways. Thank you. Good day, Dickemites, and welcome to the first episode of Dickem 2Nite, the show where I talk and you all are along for the ride. Brought to you by Shaka-Cola. Not in any official capacity, but this shit has worked like a charm, and is definitely a good alternative to brewing coffee in the morning, and it's way cheaper too. It's like $60 for 10 tins on Amazon. That's a steal. It's worth checking out. Anyways, without further ado, today's main event, Starship Troopers. I've watched the movie, I've read the book, and boy do I have some thoughts. I had a few ideas for this first episode, but seeing as the dust seems to have settled on our first semi-annual online Starship Troopers discourse, I sat down and decided to do my research. It was my first time watching both the movie and reading the book. I wasn't really too familiar with the franchise up until recently. I realized I'd seen some stills, a couple memes from the movies over the years, and it's always nice to know where some of these quotes come from. To those not familiar with the source material, major spoilers ahead, and I really recommend you watch both the movie and read the book first. The movie isn't really too hard to find online. You can see it on sites like 123 Movies, and on YouTube there's a free audiobook you can listen to. I'm going to be talking about the stories of both, because they're pretty different, so you've been warned. Best not to let a retard like me ruin it for you. Alright, let's get into it. Firstly, I want to talk about the movie, because it's a bit of a shorter conversation compared to the book. There's been a lot said about the movie, and I won't get into all of it here, and I'll bring up most of the main talking points here at the end, just so that way everyone gets up to speed, but I want to talk first about the movie's director, Paul Verhoeven. Some of you guys may recognize that name. He happens to be the guy that also directed RoboCop and the original Total Recall. Two of my favorite movies, by the way, as well as a bunch of other shit that I've never heard of and frankly don't care about, but that's probably where you recognize the name from. It's a fairly well-known fact that he didn't actually read Starship Troopers. He read something along the lines of 2 chapters and then just had his friend give him the SparkNotes version, and that's what the movie is pretty much based on. Already not off to a good start. I don't even think the movie was going to be called Starship Troopers at first, just something that was vaguely inspired by it or happened to be similar to it, and then they just decided to use the name. My guess is for brand recognition, but I'm not really sure. If you read the book and then immediately hit yourself in the head with a hammer a few dozen times, I suppose the overarching plot is vaguely similar, but any level of scrutiny will tear that to shreds. But let's go ahead and get into a very poor and quick recap of the movie's story, just so we're all up to speed. The movie follows Johnny Rico, a senior in high school in the 23rd century, in a society where you have to complete military service in order to vote. Johnny's parents, who are civilians, meaning they did no military service, are against the idea and say it's not worth it. Ignoring them, Johnny enlists for the mobile infantry, which in this movie you can pretty much equate to the modern idea of hoorah Marines. So far the movie is fairly consistent to the book, although with the addition of a prom dance and this one dude who's a rival for Johnny and his friend Carmen in like a weird love triangle. While writing the script, I can't even remember what his name was. He was just a generic douchebag high schooler. But upon reading the Wikipedia article, I find that the dude's name is Xander Barkalow. What the fuck kind of name is that? Doesn't matter, because he ends up getting his brain sucked out at the end anyways by the brain bug. Johnny goes through boot camp, shoots some lasers at his fellow recruits, and during a live fire training exercise, he inadvertently gets one of his teammates killed, shot in the head. Earlier, we also get a shower scene with the guys and girls. This is the 90s, you couldn't have an action movie without showing some TNA. And we get one of the characters talk about how she's in the mobile infantry to get a permit to have children. Seems a little eugenics-y, and also doesn't make any sense because Johnny's parents are both civilians, so what's the point? I don't really think they thought that one through, and as far as I'm aware, that's not in the book. Anyways, going forward, after this fuck-up that gets a teammate killed, Johnny is publicly lashed and almost leaves the MI, that's the mobile infantry, before he sees on a news broadcast that the arachnids, the alien enemies of this movie, chucked an asteroid at Earth that destroyed Buenos Aires, where Johnny's parents lived. Oh yeah, did I forget to mention that? This guy is supposed to be from Buenos Aires. It makes sense in the book because his real name is Juan Rico, but this is ridiculous. The actor for Johnny, Casper Van Dien, says he thinks that his Johnny Rico is a descendant of the Nazis that fled to Argentina after World War II. But if that's the case, then the Nazis of this timeline absolutely bleached the fuck out of Argentina, because I swear to God, everyone in Buenos Aires was white in this movie. Moving on, due to the deaths of his parents, Johnny rejoins the MI and goes with a group, the Roughnecks, to Klendathu, which is the home planet of the arachnids, and they get absolutely fucking mogged by the bugs. After this abysmal failure, the leading general steps down and is replaced by a black lady. Take that, chuds. And they rethink their battle plan. We also see Carmen do some stuff here too, but I don't really care about that shit because it's kind of boring and just kind of thrown in there. We see a few action sequences. Johnny moves up in the MI and his high school teacher, Ragzak, joins up with them. For a while, it's just your standard sci-fi action schlock, which isn't a bad thing per se. It's just a shame that the book is way more philosophical, which kind of lets you down if you're going from the book to the movie. We get a few more scenes. Johnny's new love interest, Dizzy, dies. Another character I forgot to mention because she's really not that important. And Verhoeven gives us some costume design that tries really hard to make the setting seem fascist adjacent, even though the entire point of Johnny joining in the first place is that he wants to vote. A few more scenes. They hunt for a brain bug. It sucks out that one dude's brains, whose name I have, again, already forgotten. Johnny saves Carmen, and boom. That's pretty much it. Overall, not a bad sci-fi movie, but it really falls flat as a Starship Troopers movie for reasons I'll get into in a second. The main thing is that a lot of scenes and characters are jumbled around or mixed together, and you can really tell after having read the book that Paul Verhoeven did not give a shit about the source material, which is honestly a real shame, because now just about every facet of the Starship Troopers brand is action as opposed to being a philosophical work. The CGI is a little dated. I'd even say a little bit bad for the time, considering we'd get the Phantom Menace 2 years later after this came out. And while the CGI in that movie is definitely also dated, it's leagues ahead of some parts of this movie. I'm not saying this to take away from it. I'm actually a fan of sort of cheesy CGI. But I'm recalling a bit where they're talking about Klendathu, and they're showing its star system, and it's literally just two lens flares against a black screen. Hilarious. Kino. Movie of the year. I also like the bits where you have what look like commercial breaks to do a little bit of exposition and world building, which I also find hilarious due to how dated they are. I mean, just look at it. Very late 90s style of graphics. Absolutely beautiful. Now, let's quickly go into a summary about the book. It's not a super long book, but quite a lot happens, so this will also be fairly quick, so we can get into the discussion about the consensus behind both. The book starts out with Juan Johnny Rico, I'll be calling him Juan for easier distinction, getting ready to drop onto a planet controlled by an alien race called the Skinnies, which were notably absent from the 97 movie. I haven't watched the other Starship Troopers movies, so don't tell me that they're in them. We're talking about the 97 film only. They drop onto the surface, not in a dropship, but in these plastic shells with parachutes, which are almost closer to ODST drop pods from Halo. They're also wearing power armor, which is described as looking like a big metal gorilla, another thing absent from the movie. Juan goes around nuking buildings, setting fires, and then heads with his squad to evac, where a male Dizzy Flores dies heading back to the ship. Not sure why they made him a chick for the movie when something like 3 pages are dedicated to this guy in the beginning of the book, and I don't remember if he ever actually shows up again. We then flash back to Rico's senior year of high school, where he and his friend Carl, present in the movie, are planning on joining the armed forces when they graduate. After a fight with his parents, Rico is unsure if he'll even enlist, but accompanies Carl to the recruiting office. It's only when he finds out that Carmen is going to enlist to be a pilot that he enlists as well. He tries to be a pilot, but whines all the way down to mobile infantry. It's also treated like your stereotypical hoorah Marines, but they're given more respect and better gear than you think. We also have a couple other distinctions from the movie, like the mention of neo-dogs, which are dogs that can speak, and we get cybernetics in the book as well, but they're described like they look like real prosthetics instead of the visibly robotic appendages that we see in the movie, which I'm not sure why they went with that. I guess to make it more distinct, but I don't know. Anyways, Juan goes through training. We witness a court-martial of a fellow recruit. Rico's history teacher, a Mr. Dubois, sends him a few letters which spark a few flashbacks to his moral philosophy class, which serves as time for exposition and a place to put forth the philosophy of the worlds that Juan Rico inhabits. The bugs send a meteor to Earth, which once again wipes out Buenos Aires and kills Juan's mother, but as we learn later, not his father. We also see a recruit be publicly executed by hanging for killing a baby girl, which brings up some more interesting philosophy surrounding how to deal with criminals and such. The Battle of Clendathu happens. It's a failure, like in the movie, but we don't get much description about the specifics. Rico goes into officer school to get a higher rank. He reunites with his dad, who enlisted after the meteor strike destroyed Buenos Aires. Rico meets up with Carmen, and the both of them talk about Carl, who, in the book, died pretty early on into the war, as well as some other stuff which bogs down the summary, but is fun to read and serves as some good character insight. We get an operation where the MI try to capture some brain bugs, and are actually successful. They capture more than one. We even get a description about how Rico and his group are cornered in tunnels by bugs, and being unable to use the explosives on their power armor, literally fight them off with their hands and feet, which is really fucking cool. The novel ends with Rico and his dad preparing to drop on Clendathu, and Rico getting a promotion. Again, very quick summary of a book that's 260 pages long, but that's the general gist of it, because I'm expecting that either you're already familiar with the source material, or you're ready to go and read it yourself, because you really should. Seriously, the book is like $20 for a physical copy, and there's that free audiobook on YouTube. All in all, a very interesting read. You'll note that it has a lot less action than the movie. Only about 2 battles are described in detail. The whole thing reads like a veteran's account of a war, which makes sense, seeing as it was written by a Navy veteran. It also has a lot of really interesting talking points regarding government and philosophy, which was really refreshing after having watched the movie first. Now, time to get into the discourse surrounding both, namely the movie. It's very popular to claim that the movie is a satire of fascism, and while that may have been what the director intended, it really falls flat on its face. Now, before anyone starts throwing names at me, starting useless debates on whether or not I'm a fascist, I want to be very clear about something. I am not a fascist. I think it's a very poor system of government that happens to be very misunderstood. If you want a good video about fascism, I recommend Pilgrim Pass's video, It's Not Fascism, Bro, which I will link in the description. But again, I'm not a fascist, so don't start with me. Now, with that being said, I don't agree that the world of Starship Troopers is fascist. I mean, it was written by an American military veteran in the late 50s. Is it militaristic? Yeah, but then again, most societies throughout history have been. If anything, the Terran Federation is more akin to the Roman Republic in how it operates. There are elections, namely, but also there isn't any racial discrimination in the novel. It follows an Argentinian guy named Juan Rico, for Christ's sakes. As for the movie, it may have been intended to be a satire of fascism, but it does a really poor job, namely because there isn't any fascism in the Terran Federation to satirize. The best it can do is the outfits of some military leaders, which I suppose is vaguely Nazi-esque, but I grow very tired of having to deal with people that see nicely dressed military people and immediately cry fascist. Let's be honest here. The Nazis had an excellent sense of fashion, and that was on purpose. The SS uniforms were designed by Hugo Boss, for crying out loud. They wanted to give themselves an air of superiority in class, because looks show importance. But that doesn't mean every government entity that looks dapper is taking inspiration from the Nazis. It's a tired trope at this point, and frankly, the best swing the movie takes to try and mock fascism is the outfits. Another thing that I see is people trying to compare the arachnids to some variation of real-life ethnic groups, and it's just a repeat of the orcs or black people argument that we had several years ago. It's just not what the movie is intending for you to see. I mean, we have a race of murderous, hive-minded bugs, one of whom literally sucks a dude's brain out, and what you think is, oh yeah, this represents a Jewish person, or oh yeah, this represents a Muslim person. What is wrong with you? That is not at all a one-to-one comparison, and frankly, if I was part of the groups that you were comparing me to the bugs, I'd feel fucking insulted, because these are very clearly antagonistic creatures. Paul Verhoeven even admits that in the movie, the bugs attacked first. They blew up Buenos Aires, and all of this started over what? Some Mormons deciding to go and take over some land that they had been advised not to take. There was no attempts at democracy. There was no attempts at trying to reach an engagement. No, the bugs just started launching meteors towards Earth and blowing up cities. It's a defensive war. So even if the bugs were meant to represent some ethnic group, it's not painting them in a good light. So stop making this comparison. It doesn't make you look good. There are, I'm sure, examples where perhaps this is meant to be intended, but these are bugs that literally cut people in half and suck their brains out. These are not the people that you want to be sympathizing for. They are very clearly the bad guys. Moving on from that little tirade, another thing that the movie does, it does a very poor job of mocking the Terran Federation in general. Sure, they have a devastating loss on the first Battle of Clendathu, but we see the general in charge be held accountable, and he steps down. I see some people mocking that the MI give kids a gun to play with, or some bullets as souvenirs, and then there's the scene where the bug war first starts, and the kids are seen stomping cockroaches to do their part. And while this may be a satire of militarism, you should think of it this way. Back in World War II, did kids not have toy guns so they could play soldier? Did they not have posters all over talking about defeating the Axis powers and doing your part? I see this as being no different, especially in a society that treats the military with such high esteem. The humans have a major victory in the end anyways, by capturing a brain bug, so it's not even like they do all of this fighting just to lose. I seriously don't get how people parrot the movie as being this great satire of fascist ideology. I think it's mainly due to the fact that people will believe whatever they're told, and that today the definition we have for fascism is incredibly loose, something talked about in the video by Pilgrim's Pass I have linked below. Fancy suits and soldiers don't make fascism. It's a very specific political doctrine with a very specific outline. You can read about it in the paper Mussolini wrote about fascism, seeing as he's literally the dude that made the political philosophy. Right from the horse's mouth. No guessing necessary. And I think it's because of this loose interpretation that people have. They think that this is fascist satire, when really, if anything, it's militarism satire, and it's not a really good piece of it either. And then there's the fact that the book is just better in almost every regard. Verhoeven made a schlocky sci-fi action movie and slapped on the name of a book he didn't even care to read. completely ignoring all of the deep political philosophy contained within. It's honestly quite a shame. And now, a few times a year, we have a bunch of people who have zero critical thinking skills, or haven't even seen the movie or read the book, try and dunk on the people who enjoy it as missing the point, when there isn't even really a point to be missed. It's just not good at being satire, and it's not even good at being a Starship Troopers movie in the first place. I seriously recommend we stop having these same talking points be parroted, and that everyone just go read the fucking book, and read the Fascist Manifesto so they know what the hell they're talking about and when they call something fascism. If you don't like fascism, either as a system of government or a political philosophy, that's fine. I don't blame you. I'm more of a localist myself. Just be informed about what you're actually talking about so we're not making straw man arguments and mislabeling things, which honestly only detract from your end goal of getting rid of fascism. It makes you look like an idiot. And while fascists are not always the smartest bunch, they seem smarter than you in comparison if you just go online and claim everything is fascism. This goes for anything. Educate yourself on what you're talking about so you can make a clear, concise argument instead of just throwing around your feces online and screaming like a chimpanzee. Overall, my opinion, is Starship Troopers, the movie, fascist satire? No, I don't think so, and even if it is, it's not very good satire. And the book? Also not fascist, and is also leagues better than the movie. It's pretty common that movies are inferior to their novel counterparts, but holy shit, this doesn't even deserve to be called Starship Troopers. Aside from a few broad story elements, these two stories have almost nothing in common. A real shame, if you ask me. And that's going to conclude the first episode of Dickem 2Nite. I hope you all enjoyed this very rushed episode. I blame Helldivers too, personally. Another piece of media that's being called fascist satire that I don't even want to bring up in this episode. This script is already 5 pages long, and I have no idea how long this will end up being once I record and edit the entire thing. Maybe in another episode. Thank you all very much for watching. Please let me know what you thought in the comments below, and be sure to send any ideas you have for future episodes my way. Make sure to follow me on Twitter, I'm not calling it X, at Nick Dickem, so you can see me lose my mind in real time. And, if you've got some money you feel is burning a hole in your pocket, I do have a Patreon I don't think I ever finished setting up, so if you're feeling generous, you're more than welcome to chuck a few dollars at me. Might make me less lazy, who knows. That's all for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you in the next episode. God bless.